I can't believe this is happening right now. President Biden is making three huge mistakes, and we're about to see some serious stuff hit the fan. The deep state that is controlling President Biden have essentially backed themselves into a corner, and this is devastating for the United States. We're going to get to these three mistakes here in a minute, but first, we have a couple of big pieces of news that I want to get to, which will shape the U.S. for years to come. Over the past few hours, while they want you to be enjoying Super Bowl, festivities, President Biden and the UK government have quietly ramped up massive attacks against targets in Yemen.
Earlier, President Biden had warned the U.S. would respond if the Iran-backed group continued what he called outrageous behavior in attacking shipping in the Red Sea.
They started dropping bombs at 3 a.m. in Yemen. Remember, this is one of the poorest countries in the world, and yet the United States and UK are failing, and they will lose. They are losing in this battle. Saudi Arabia has found out over the course of a decade that you can't beat Yemen, by the way. They've tried, and they failed. Yemen, it turns out, will never give up. Biden's first huge mistake is launching attacks against Yemen because he cannot win. This is asymmetrical warfare. We bring in massive destroyers, and the Houthi rebels have rubber boats and Kalashnikovs. Guess who's winning? Yeah, the guys on the rubber boats. Ex-CIA analyst Larry Johnson told me this week that asymmetrical warfare is precisely the reason we will lose unless we drop a nuke on them or send millions of Americans to fight and die there.
There's nothing the U.S. and the UK can do to stop them, short of dropping a nuke on the country or coming up with, 2 or 3 million men to invade the country.
And now the Houthis are threatening Biden. Stop these attacks right now. Stop supporting Israel, or we will cut the internet underneath the ocean. That would be devastating to Western economies if that happens. And what did Biden and Congress do? Well, they spent the weekend trying to send $95 billion to Ukraine and Israel. The Houthis saying we will attack Americans at these bases, which are illegally occupying countries in Africa and the Middle East. And of course, during the Super Bowl, they show, they show the forces in these different bases around the Middle East. They're watching the Super Bowl, having some food, right? We're supposed to celebrate that. They are sitting ducks. Daniel McAdams, who points out that Biden is using these Americans as bait right now, tripwires, in order to create more war.
It's no longer tenable. We've had 180 some attacks on the U.S. Outposts out there in the last few months, and hundreds of people injured, and as we see now, some killed. That will get even worse. This is an untenable situation.
Biden is talking out of both sides of his mouth. On the one hand, he's sending billions more to Netanyahu to bomb Gaza, but then he tells us at a press conference that what Netanyahu is doing over there is over the top. His words, over the top. And women and children are being slaughtered. So which is it then?
The conduct of the response in the Gaza Strip has been over the top.
Talk is cheap, but your money is flowing right to Israel, and Yemen knows it, exactly what you're doing, America, and Americans are going to be killed as a result of it. This week, we saw the clearest sign yet of just how bad it's going for President Biden. We're watching a naval war unfold in the Red Sea right before our eyes. Houthi rebels attacked the U.S. and UK ships in the Red Sea to devastating effect. The UK destroyer Diamond was hit by a Houthi rebel rockets. And then laughingly, the British military said it needed to go back to England because of, quote, technical problems. So that's what we're calling a rocket attack now? Technical problems? The Houthis also struck this cargo ship Morningtide. And what's amazing about this is that the British tried to pretend like they didn't own the ship so that Yemen would leave it alone. They actually changed the registration to Chinese owner in order to make it through.
This is the maritime version of transgenderism. I identify as Chinese.
Attacking Yemen is his first great mistake. And that carries over into his next great mistake, which is showing the world that Europe is not our friend. His attack of Yemen, his support of the assault in Gaza have alienated friends in Europe that we had. The UK is only country supporting the military assault in the Middle East right now, the only one. We blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And Germany did nothing, but now their economy is in ruins. So we've alienated Europe. Biden even warned Netanyahu about the attacks in Gaza 3 months ago, telling him your indiscriminate bombings of civilians in Gaza is alienating Europe. He told Netanyahu this. He didn't take his own medicine. Now Europe is turning its back on the United States. Biden's greatest mistake, though, is how he brought Russia and China closer than ever and distracted the world from China's economic meltdown, which no one is talking about right now. His sanctions against Russia have only hurt the United States, and they've made Russia stronger than ever. Last week, journalist Tucker Carlson was in Moscow. He saw firsthand how Russia has been helped by these idiot sanctions that have driven prices through the roof in the United States and Europe, while making Russia stronger than ever. Tucker traveled all over the area looking at grocery stores in Moscow to study their prices, how much food they have. He was stunned to learn that the stores are fully stocked with fresh food, great prices. Tell that right now to Americans being crushed under inflation, all thanks to Biden's sanctions against Russia. Putin in his interview said that what you are doing in the United States, you're shooting yourselves in the foot. Don't you have anything better to do than send billions of dollars to Ukraine while your borders are wide open and $34 trillion in debt?
Don't you have anything better to do? You have issues on the border, issues with migration, issues with the national debt, more than $33 trillion. You have nothing better to do, so you should fight in Ukraine?
China, meanwhile, is melting down economically, and desperate people do desperate things. This week, stocks lost $7 trillion in value in Hong Kong Stock Exchange. China's real estate bubble is bursting at the seams.
Every single property developer in China that's public or listed is in default, bankruptcy today.
Biden's blunders are playing right into China's hands. As the economic collapse intensifies, China is going to look to become more hostile to the West, more independent, hold its cards to its chest, withhold minerals from the West. It's already revealed to us just how this will play out. Look at the rare earth elements. They have now cornered the mining supply to use as leverage against the United States. As Barron's points out, China has a chokehold on critical minerals right now. They will not hesitate to look at which metals the West has neglected and desperately needs, and they will use those next as bargaining chips. We're talking lithium, uranium, but I believe I know which one is the nearest and dearest to the West right now, and that is nickel. Yep, nickel. And we're going to talk more about that in a second because that's the news update part of today's video. Now, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, which is tied directly to Biden's blunders in the Middle East and the partnership of Russia and China right now. In light of everything I've just shown you, if you're an investor, you need to pay close attention to what I'm about to show you next. We've covered many national security issues on this channel over the many years. And now I want to focus on crucial commodities that to me are crucial to national security. And the Biden administration is totally ignoring this because they've totally shut down mining and farmed it out across the world. So in the past, I've highlighted how the United States hardly mines any uranium, even though it's the world's largest consumer of uranium. And the same is true with lithium. The mother lode, though, is nickel, which the United States needs in massive quantities right now, and we don't have it. I'm going to show you what Elon Musk has to say about nickel in a second, but before we go over that, I've taken months in putting together a lot of facts about how globalization has drained America's mining security. I've shown you how the Clintons, of course, farmed out uranium to Russia, and it's left us in the hands of our enemies. I've shown you how these facts here on the show. Now, I'm not saying they are our enemies. I'm saying that's how we perceive them. The United States openly declares these people our enemies, and we're relying on them for all of these minerals. It makes no sense. So that's exactly why I want to show you this company, Alaska Energy Metals.
Tucker Carlson finally had his interview with Putin, where he quickly received nearly 200 million views on Twitter alone. So predictably, the corporate dinosaur media immediately had a meltdown.
The Russian president turning to right-wing conspiracy theorist Tucker Carlson.
Sleeping with the enemy goes this headline. And this, is Tucker Carlson a Putin pawn?
But Tucker Carlson is going to be there and be the journalist that none of us are.
And I say, yeah, journalist in quotes.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson is not a journalist, not even close.
His name is Tucker Carlson, and he is the only American journalist who has been able to interview Putin since the invasion in 2014.
While Tucker's out there like an eager puppy.
Some say Chris Wallace is especially bitter, as Tucker had previously called him out for being terrible at his job.
Probably not a friend of yours, Chris Wallace. He was the moderator.
Not a friend.
I said, why is it he wants to be Mike, but he doesn't have the talent? It's one of those
bitchy little man.
He wanted to be.
Now, the Babylon Bee believes it's infuriating mainstream journalists because they don't quite understand what actual journalism looks like. But I honestly think it's because a boring 2-hour interview of Putin is pulling in Mr. Beast levels of viewership. Meanwhile, cable can't even pull in 0.1% of what he receives. Or if you look at CNN's page in the same time frame, they struggle to even get decoy voice numbers on their videos. And I've said it before, despite CNN being a billion-dollar corporation with over 4 decades of experience, on the internet, we're peers. And whatever insulting things they'd have to say about what I do on this channel, we are peers. So maybe that's why Hi-Rez has Tucker doing his victory lap on the has-been media.
The only journalist I trust is Tucker.
They tried to stop me from interviewing Putin. The whole world's lost their damn mind and they're proven. I'm just a journalist getting to the truth. CNN and Fox are dead. No one cares about the news.
And honestly, I think AI Tucker dropping bars is infinitely more appealing to listen to than anything the corporate media puts out. That's why it's great we have the sponsor for today's video, Raycon. And with Valentine's Day coming up, there's no better time than today to find your perfect match for your ears. As I don't know about you, but my ears reject everything they don't feel is the ideal fit, so I was constantly losing earbuds to the floor, which basically ruins your entire day because there's no way I'm sticking that back inside my ears after that. But since Raycon's everyday earbuds come with 5 different sets of optimized gel tips to get you that perfect in-ear fit. So whenever I'm out and about just trying to embrace the outdoors, I no longer have to worry about losing my music to the one-size-fits-all arranged marriage style of earbuds, which is especially amazing as my Raycons are actually half the price of other premium audio brands that have had even fewer features than these Raycon everyday earbuds. And if you click the link in the description box below or go to buyraycon.com/decoyvoice, you can get 15% off your Raycon purchase plus free shipping. That's buyraycon.com/decoyvoice for 15% off your Raycon purchase and free shipping. So I just find it hilarious that Fox News fires Tucker, but then has to cover Tucker's work just to stay relevant. Because for whatever reason, Fox wanted to suppress Carlson's message, and that backfired. And now looking at his numbers across platforms, something equally suspicious is occurring. Because when I search Tucker Putin interview on YouTube, in the top news section, you get NBC, CNN, and Scripps putting their spin on things. Then The Hollywood Reporter, some Democrat shill saying Chris Wawa destroys Tucker, and then finally, the actual video I was specifically searching for. And even despite the suppression, Carlson still managed to pull in over 13 million views. Then when you look at his video on Facebook, I don't even think they'll show you how many times people played this interview. Now people on social media are bringing up the fact that even the Wall Street Journal reported how Facebook demoted Tucker content at the demand of the Biden White House. But it should be noted that this was about posts regarding the virus years ago. Although it's no surprise, as the Biden administration basically admitted pressuring social media platforms is pretty much their policy.
Our hope is that all major tech platforms and all major news sources, for that matter, be responsible and be vigilant. We want every platform to continue doing more to call out mis and disinformation while also uplifting accurate information.
So it finally makes sense exactly why they freaked out so badly over Elon Musk taking over Twitter, because they can easily suppress the truth by manipulating your search results in favor of the Democrats, and the controlled opposition can do the same by axing anybody that dare actually question their narratives. But Twitter going rogue and Tucker going solo just wasn't something they were expecting, as Carlson finding greater success alone kinda reminds me of Justin Timberlake, leaving behind the dead weight of places like CNN sink of equally forgettable people. As when mainstream media personalities cry over places like the LA Times making mass layoffs at their news outlets, they also criticize Tucker's solo endeavors, claiming without the TikTok-style editing and sensationalized thumbnails, he won't be able to compete with streamers or YouTubers. But then that specific video quickly racked up 122 million views. Now I do admit in that interaction, I personally catch a few strays. Me being on YouTube, using bold red text in the thumbnails with cartoon-like background music and so many jump cuts it seems like I'm a Navy SEAL, as after 8 minutes you won't hear me breathe once. But I'm not a journalist. I'm more like this weird internet bridge troll that speaks in riddles about your impending doom on this path, because I openly admit Tucker Carlson, like him or not, is currently the most important journalist alive, as even if every single word said in Putin in that interview was a lie, in a world of so-called newscasters that are all eager to parrot the same official state-sponsored narrative, at least Tucker is brave enough to ask the questions, because even prefacing his own interview with Putin, he even calls him out for his nonsense.
One note before you watch. At the beginning of the interview, we asked the most obvious question, which is, why did you do this? Putin went on for a very long time, probably half an hour, about the history of Russia. Honestly, we thought this was a filibustering technique and found it annoying and interrupted him several times, and he responded he was annoyed.
And was brave enough to inquire about releasing journalists from Russian prison.
Evan Gershkovich, who's the Wall Street Journal reporter, he's 32, and he's been in prison for almost a year.
This is a huge story in the United States, and I just want to ask you directly, without getting into the details of it or your version of what happened, if as a sign of your decency, you would be willing to release him to us and we'll bring him back to the United States.
And with this interview, we now know that Putin claims to not want to push this war further.
Well, the argument, I know you know this, is that, well, he invaded Ukraine, he has territorial aims across the continent, and you're saying unequivocally you don't.
It is absolutely out of the question. You just don't have to be any kind of analyst. It goes against common sense to get involved in some kind of a global war.
And also talked about wanting a peace deal.
You're saying you want a negotiated settlement to what's happening in Ukraine.
Right. And we made it. We prepared a huge document in Istanbul that was initialed by the head of the Ukrainian delegation.
But to be fair, the Biden administration says not to believe a word Putin says.
And I don't think the American people are going to be swayed by one single interview. And I think anybody that watches that interview, again, I haven't seen it, whatever's said, need to make sure remember, you're listening to Vladimir Putin, and you shouldn't take at face value anything he has to say.
Now, at least to me, it sounds like Kirby states that he hasn't even heard the interview, but already knows it's misinformation, which just reminds me of a kid that knows he's about to get caught in a lie. If his mother says, "Hey, I just talked to that neighbor about their broken window," and the kid immediately starts exclaiming, "Hey, whatever they said is a lie." Now, I don't mean to oversimplify a geopolitical conflict, but after the controlled opposition of Fox News fires Carlson, the mainstream freak out over Elon taking over Twitter, the subsequent meltdowns over Tucker trying to interview Putin, and now the preemptive suppression of whatever was said. I don't necessarily believe Putin, I just find it strange they so desperately want me to not believe anything and everything he's saying, as even Democrats running for president reiterate the sentiments made by Putin.
This is a war that should have never happened. It's a war the Russians tried repeatedly to settle on terms that were very, very beneficial to Ukraine and us.
Meanwhile, other Democrats in power keep pushing the American people into sending tens of billions more of our tax dollars. Now, I was going to show footage from Ukraine, allegedly of forced conscriptions in the streets, women fighting on the front lines, and other videos that could possibly be faked or taken out of context, as social media is a powerful tool when seeking insight from the front lines of a war, but oftentimes can be used for misinformation, especially if you can't identify the places or even speak the language. My issue here is, they want my money to go fight the bad guys overseas. But whenever I watch the mainstream media documenting what's happening, they immediately got called out and shamed by the citizens actually living what they're reporting on. As I keep seeing this 20-second clip of Trump campaigning in South Carolina, captioned, "Trump is asking Russia to attack NATO." What the clip featured is very vague.
Well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay.
So even Luke Skywalker replies, saying this is a campaign ad for Biden, with others suggesting somehow Trump works for Putin. Well, let's pull out more than 20 seconds to see the full context of this clip.
Why are we at over $200 billion? And the European nations are, if you add them up, it's a very similar sized economy. They're at $25 billion. So one of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You gotta pay. You gotta pay your bills. And the money came flowing in. As if I said, yes, I will. You don't have to pay. Yes, I will. Most politicians have said to that, yes, we will protect you under any circumstance. Well, then they're never paying up. Hundreds of billions of dollars came into NATO, and that's why they have money today, because of what I did.
So they cultivated this entire narrative of Orange Man bad, he's ordering Putin to plow into NATO, when in actuality, it was just Trump demanding and successfully getting other countries to contribute to their defense spending of their countries. But now you have washed up celebrities leaning into some out of context clip as if this is somehow a win for Biden. And this instance is just one of many times where algorithmic and media manipulation can make the masses think something entirely fabricated. And the sad part is, it's working. because now they're turning on Elon Musk and Starlink with claims that his internet service has now been sold to the Russians, with very conveniently taken images of Starlink in the hands of cropped out soldiers, where social media posts have a full story on the devices being sold through Dubai. But Elon Musk himself says this is fake news, it hasn't been sent there directly or indirectly, and when asked if it could be sent there without his knowledge, Elon replies they can't even be activated in Russia. And if this interaction took place not on a platform that Musk controls himself, giving him front page status on all his statements, people would still likely believe that Starlink was sold to the Russians because spaceman bad. And this is just yet another convenient reason we need to devalue our dollars with another 60 billion sent overseas. And anybody even slightly involved in your ability to see that we might not need to do that gets top to bottom bad press from more state-sponsored media outlets and manipulated social media algorithms. Because I could accept that maybe Tucker, maybe Trump, or maybe Musk are all these evil, rancid characters. But how come we only are told to think this when they just happen to challenge their narrative? As I'll tell you right now, I listened to that Tucker Putin interview, and I don't believe everything Putin was claiming. We've seen the media manipulate what Trump says in the headlines because we can easily hear it for ourselves as it's in English. But who knows how accurate Putin's voiceovers really were?
Why do you think the West rebuffed you then? What motivates this from your point of view?
Sorry, but I cannot disclose that information to you, an American journalist. But all I can say is, Decoy Voice is about to drop the hottest mixtape of 2024. So make sure you like and subscribe to this video.
So even though the Biden administration says everything he said is a lie, you can't prove he doesn't think my mixtape is fire. And if you appreciate alliteration over my concise, lighthearted commentary on the tragic status that is today's reality, hopefully I've earned your subscription, then go check out the video on how a random surfer accidentally caught the invasion of California on camera.